We are live. Hi, folks. Today we're talking about self-publishing and whether you should self-publish your book or not. We have two people from the publishing and writing realm. We have Paul Millard here, author of the Pathless Path. He's been on my podcast, Red Radio. We also have Joshua Lisec, author of So Good They Call You a Fake, the book I'll have in my hands as soon as it actually gets published, which is happening 10 days from now. Joshua, Paul, welcome to our live stream.
Thanks for having us.
Excited to be here.
Yes. I'm excited. Now, first off, I want to start off with Paul here. Why did you decide that self-publishing was the right answer instead of the more traditional routes available?
Yeah, so I think part of it is I think that's a fake choice. I think my recommendation to most people is actually just start writing and see what you actually want to write before you make that decision. I think often that fake decision is an excuse to not actually take action on writing a book. So just start writing, see what you have, and then start making decisions along the way. For me, I worked 10 years in the corporate world in consulting, had many bosses and don't really like bosses. I've been working on my own for 6 years, and sort of creative control and freedom is worth almost everything to me. So I don't really care about any sort of narrative or upside that a traditional publisher can offer. It's just not worth the cost for me. So I just started, and writing is one of my favorite things to do. So writing a book is something I sort of bet that would be enjoyable and delightful. It's probably the most rewarding project I've ever done in my life. So I put my heart and soul and time into it. I had a lot of fun with it and wrote the book. For me, writing the book was joy itself. And then the sales I've had have just been sort of wild.
Your book caused me to pause. And I read your book and I stopped and I thought about some of the questions you ask. And I just paused for a minute, which in my line of work, there's unlimited number of tasks for unlimited number of people wanting my attention all the time, right? So taking that pause and thinking, am I on the right path? Do I want to be on this path? It was just really good for that, to go take a break and even for a couple hours and think about it. So I'm glad you just wrote it. Now, on the other side of things, so we have the Paul style, which is just write and figure out the details later. Joshua, you have a different perspective on that, or you've also worked with people that have more of that mindset.
Yes. So I now have my own book, but this is after 12 years of ghostwriting over 80 books for other people. Usually those other people are entrepreneurs, executives, experts, consultants, coaches. The occasional celebrities have been in there. And their intention is to have already had a book out. So when they reach out to me, Joshua, I need a book out and I need it to have already come out, is usually the motivation. These people are experts who want to be positioned as authorities. So there's more commercialization than, let's say, art involved, more than less creativity and more cash money is the intention for this, where they want to scoop up as many people in their audience who haven't purchased their other higher priced products and services with a $19.99 softcover or $29.99 hardcover, or to have a thing that they can be the tome for their personal brand that all future audience members, fans, followers, etc., are funneled through as part of a value ladder, where there's the book, and then there's the masterclass, and then there's the courses, and then the coaching, and then the consulting, and then there's the highest paying tier up there. And so just kind of writing with it is not really what they're interested in, but they will often come to me with a book idea. Hey, this is what I think my book should be about. But usually the book is a distillation of the highest value they have to offer people. So a little bit different from your experiences, Paul, although many of them do independently publish because they don't want to jump through any hoops. They don't want to have to ask permission for anyone, especially when the book idea is worse after going through the traditional gatekeeping process. So I've ghostwritten for several traditionally published authors, and I can't think of a single recommended change that made it better. Everything was about usually it was in the name of diversity, equity, inclusion, which was code for, we don't know what the product market fit is going to be, so have it be for everyone. And then we'll find out which niche it resonates with the most, and then we'll put all our money into marketing it in that direction. So the advice was vague, way overscoped, and too broad.
Yeah, I think building on that, I think that the interesting thing with me is I had 3,000 newsletter subscribers when I started writing my book. I had 2,000 Twitter followers. I would not have gotten a book deal. And if I did, it would have been something like 20 grand, right? So there's way more upside for somebody early on their path to actually bet on themselves. Whereas if you go the traditional route, you're capping your downside. And I think I had a similar sense in that I had a very unique perspective on work that was not being covered in the mainstream media. Now, I don't really, I actually see that as a great thing for me because it's like, oh, wow, these are the things that are getting clicks and generating profits. That's a business, right? I can actually just channel my actual curiosity, go super deep and ask questions that wouldn't get published as like sort of an outrageous headline. And people's relationship with a book is completely different than scrolling a feed, right? So you can go deeper, you can do these things. But I think a lot of people in these institutions, I work for many large organizations, and you realize over time that they generate mediocre work that is good enough, right? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to take my curiosity to like weird extremes. And like I quoted random friends on Twitter,
Yes.
right? Those wouldn't even pass a publisher's review because it's probably not valid. It's probably not good enough. Like weird terms people aren't going to remember. And that's sort of the creative and intellectual ownership that I wanted to maintain doing such a thing.
Why was it not important for you to have the Big Five publisher seal of approval on your writing?
I got prestige early in my career, and got too much of it, to be honest. And um, it helped me play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And I realized a lot of those markers were overpriced, right? And a lot of people gave me credit. Other people's perception of who I was, I would get credit because of those things. They give you a halo, right? And they do, like it. They still matter because people pay attention to them, right? But for me, I'm crafting a life.
Yeah.
I'm not crafting a narrative or a story around my achievements. I'm really just trying to like go internal and connect to that. So Penguin actually reached out a year after my book. My sales started going like this and then up. And then they tried to buy my book. And it was actually interesting because once you're selling in the market, you have way more leverage. And it just financially also just didn't make any sense anymore.
What was after this for a while, the uptick? What can you tell contributed to the uptick? Because usually it's like, oh, if it doesn't do something in 30 to 90 days, it's toast, is the belief.
I wrote for a very, very specific niche of people, really curious, thoughtful people who need to take a different path in life. Right. And I wrote for them, basically writing for myself. And I only focus on that. In that fraction of people, there is another fraction that just absolutely love my book and buy 10 copies for their friends.
Yeah.
And I didn't really predict that, but and book people will tell you this is how books spread over time, word of mouth. Right.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I think you're a student of persuasion as well. I sort of, I've been A/B testing a lot of my ideas and writing over the years. Like I am not a purist in that I have to write the most like comprehensive, deep academic ideas. Like I like that my ideas resonate and they're entertaining and they're memorable. So I tried to inject that in every aspect of my book. So I made a few creative choices that helped inject that along the way too.
What were a couple of those creative choices?
Yeah, so you read a traditionally published book and they say, oh, the marshmallow study. And then they give you 4 pages about the whole story, retell it to you and tell you why it matters. First of all, I didn't reference the marshmallow study, but I found like all these interesting things I found over the years. And I would mention it, drop it in there real quick, tell people why it matters in the next sentence, and then move on to like another thing. So one of my hypotheses in writing a book was that people can look stuff up. We have the internet now, right? So I can plant like really deep ideas and keep moving. If people are curious, they can go get the book or go Google it, right? Instead of like this sort of explanatory thing. So I wanted to really just write a very intellectually dense book for smart, curious people. I was writing for people like myself that like can handle a lot and keep moving with a book.
Gotcha. I've heard the justification because I had this exact conversation on a similar, not the marshmallow study, but on a similar topic with an editor on a client's book, traditionally published book, and their justification was, well, the book needs to be a self-contained information ecosystem where there's no reason to leave the book. Yes, there's no reason to leave the book. Why would we want people to go to Google? They need to stay inside the book. That's why you need to tell them everything about it. You need to give them the 5 pages. Plus, that boosts the word count because so often traditionally published authors, a good example is the Checklist Manifesto, a bestseller, which is based on an article that went viral in the New Yorker, I believe. And ever since, people have joked, this book should have been an article. And well, 2007's the Checklist article that became a book was that exact situation where there was a proven piece of content that went viral, and it was given numerous other examples that made the same point to turn it into a book so that a publisher could justify a price for. And that mindset of, well, we need to justify the price and pad the word count has resulted in fluff books that are little value, but a lot of words. And it seems like independent publishers, independent authors, we don't have that problem. we don't have to pad the word count.
Yeah, and I think Checklist Manifesto may have made sense in 2008 or whenever it was published. That's like pre-Twitter, right? Yes. People's information consumption patterns have changed. And there's also a weird incentive effect. Like, this is why I say self and traditional publishing is not an equivalent choice. They're completely different games. Traditional published people push hardcovers priced higher, and then they inflate the price of Kindle ones so that people are incentivized to buy hardcovers because publishers make more money on hardcovers. They don't publish the paperback until a year later. My data says 71% of people buy the audiobook and ebook, right? Which means they're consuming on a digital device already.
Yes.
And then it's like paperbacks, right? And what's often happening is people will buy the paperback and ebook or paperback and audio and kind of like combo books, especially your biggest fans. And yeah, there's just not a good appreciation of this. And part of why I self-publish is I sense these things are changing. I don't really understand what the future is going to look like in 5 years, but ownership seems incredibly underpriced in today's, for most authors today.
Yes, and it seems also that traditional publishing is falling and perhaps slogging behind on all things internet. And there's an anecdote I like to share, which is that there was a publishing house that I taught SEO to in the year 2020.
What?
They didn't realize that you could search what keywords were being searched on and you could see monthly rankings, how many searches per month, and that could affect what you titled the chapters and the subtitle of the book. It was shocking. Where'd you get that information? How'd you come up with that? Was the response. 2020. And SEO has been around since what, 99? No, I mean, earlier even. Yeah. Anyway, the future is ownership, and the past is traditional publishing.
Yeah, I think traditional publishing it's great that it exists because to some people, an advance is super valuable, right? And can make a difference in their life and give them an upfront cash payment that they can treat writing a book as a job. I think if you look at it from a macro landscape, though, the scope and number of books that are being published is dramatically increasing,
Yes.
right? So that's amazing because there's more experiments, there's hybrid publishers, there's going to be a whole spectrum, right? And this sort of false dichotomy of one versus other is not a useful mental model. It's better to, like, if you want to write multiple books, you might do one of each, right?
Sure.
And I could see a scenario where if somebody offers me $500,000 to write a book, it's like, okay, that might make sense. That could be a good decision for my family.
Right,
But
right.
but not
But it would
20
be because
grand.
you have the track record of all those sales of successful previous books, right?
Right. And they'll pay a lot of money for people with massive audiences and a track record, but they're not going to do that for early and starting writers.
Right, right. And I always tell people that the best people to get a traditional publishing deal are those who don't need a traditional publishing deal.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Prince Harry. He like this stuff is inconsequential to him probably. It doesn't matter which way he goes. Like he's going to get all the support and help anyway.
Yes, yes. And there was a question that Brian just jotted in the comments. I think mentioning or kind of tacking on to something I said earlier. I think it's a good question for you, Paul. He said, what's the relationship between building a funnel via a book versus creating art? I usually focus on the former. And it sounds like the art, a personal art, speaking the truth from your heart, is a little more in line with what you are. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I'm not naive that I need to make money and make a living.
Yes.
Right. But I am willing to sacrifice more of the money and optimization and upside than most people, I think. But that's sort of like the art of my life and my book is like I want to figure these things out and figure out new ways to do it. Somebody said to me, like, do you have a plan to like get speaking gigs? And it literally didn't even occur to me that people did that. Like I really was just excited about writing a book because I had been writing for 3-4 years and was like, oh, this would be fun.
Interesting. Yes, yes. How have you been able to, in any way, if you have, if not, that's fine. But I'm curious what your next thing is for readers. So someone who purchases the Pathless Path, besides buying it on audio and on ebook or getting the soft cover and then buying the paperback or the audiobook after that, what else is it that people can purchase, readers?
So I did launch a community after many requests. It's a pretty light touch, smaller community. I'm not really pushing it though. I probably should talk about it more, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really have an offer. It's like subscribe to my free newsletter, and I'm going to keep writing about this because I'm endlessly curious.
I want to go look at your sales data here in just a minute, Paul. But first, Joshua, what are some of the kind of offers authors like Paul have done that you've seen bring in the most cash / been the most fun for the author, the most fulfilling?
I love that second part.
Yes. A good example of this, you actually might be able to pull up that tweet, Brian, but they're books that are not necessarily, okay, we want to sell as many copies as possible. They're what I like to call authority books, meaning a prospective client reads the book, goes, whoa, this is the person we need them yesterday. And we'll write them a check for $25,000 to come in here virtually or in person and walk us through how to implement the ideas in their book. It's that important. And that's what's fun. So there's a consultant. I write books for a lot of consultants because they use it as, it's better than a business card, better than a website, better than a webinar, better than a sales pitch. It's better than all of those combined. And so what they will do is they will often send copies of their book ahead to prospects or to try to get sales calls booked. And they do. And then the team will buy 15 copies for their product managers. And then they will write that check for 10, 15, 20K or more for them to come in and teach it to their leadership team. And those are perhaps the most rewarding conversations that the authors have with their readers. And it's kind of a DFY offer based on the book. Come in here and do everything in this for us, or at least to the extent that that's possible. Now, I joke that like fitness can't really work out for somebody on their behalf. Sex therapist, I'm not sure if that's legal. So there's some services that could be based on the book that might not quite work out, but there's something. Now, usually the lowest hanging fruit is something like an implementation community, an implementation cohort, something like that, where it's anywhere from 97 to $1,000, maybe even more, for people who love the book to join it. And it's more than a book club. It's like a book club plus coaching and consulting and a cohort with the community. And it's over a certain amount of time. Usually we're like, okay, it's a 90-day book club, but we're going to implement it in our lives or in our businesses or something like that. That's a further way to monetize it. And it's direct FaceTime with the author in one way or another. I'll probably be doing that with my own book, by the way. And I already have other offers that my book is pointing towards, both information products and courses and even services. But I want to grab the lowest hanging fruit of an implementation group, because that's one of the hardest things about an information product, a DIY product, is like doing it, getting the results from it. And people will pay for that. They will.
I have 2 products, Paul, just from having read your book. One is a 30-minute conversation, and there's a script in which you get on the phone with Paul, you pay him some amount of money, and Paul says, "What do you dream of doing right now?" And then you tell him. And then Paul says, "Why aren't you doing it?" And you start giving your reasons. And Paul, using what's in his book, starts to help you identify why it is that you haven't done that. And then at the end of that call, Paul says, "Would you appreciate this kind of lifestyle accountability each week for 30 minutes? And some people will say yes. Some people say, "No, the first 30 minutes was a sufficient kick in the butt to help me confront my decisions to go." And that right there, how to write emails or build websites or whatever, that's everywhere. But people you can trust to look you in the eye, such as it is over a screen, and say, "Why aren't you doing what you want to be doing?" And then when you give an answer, being willing to walk into it and say, "Oh, that's a real problem. Let's talk about it. That's a real challenge. Let's talk about it. How could you, or what could you be doing?" That, helping people get their dreams back. I'm sunburned right now, as you can see, because I spent Saturday on my boat and got pretty sunburned, had a great time. But it's hard to actually get out for a whole 6 hours on my own to do something. There's so many other things that need doing. But if I were to go to you and I'd say, I 100% believe, if we had a phone call and I said, "Paul, what I want to do is I want to spend 3 days in the San Juans sailing on my own this summer." And you said, "That sounds wonderful. When are you doing it?" And I think I would try to squirm out of that decision. And then once you nail me down to like, "This right here is when you're doing it," and what are your major obstacles? Like, you don't have to do any work. You just have to go through your questions, because your book proves to me that you have the authority of understanding, that you are willing to look at how you're doing things, your path that you're on, and willing to say, "Okay, is that the best path for you?" Gentlest sell in the world. So there's that as a one-time thing and as a weekly thing.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think that's the source material for my book, is I had free conversations. I called them curiosity conversations, about 500 doing this. And I sort of realized that a lot of talking to me and reading my book is permission to bet on yourself and dream bigger about your life, with a new foundational sort of lens on the world. And yeah, I mean, the short answer is I just don't really enjoy doing that for pay. I have way more fun doing it as friendly combos. That's why I wrote a book. But also, I think for me, one thing I've realized is I'm not going to quit. I have some other income sources through some consulting training and a consulting skills course I run. And this writing about work, paths, etc., I'm playing a long game. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to do this for the next 20 years. And it's sort of interesting to keep leaning into building up trust. And trust is one of the most valuable hidden resources on the internet. And eventually you can cash in. And it doesn't even have to be in a sort of like cash in way. It will be so many people are requesting X that you're like, okay, it's time to build X. And that's sort of the strategy I'm taking. And I'm very comfortable with that. I also my wife and I just don't have that many material desires. So maybe I'm just not as driven as other people.
The idea that trust you're not trying to monetize in the moment is something that's it's a kind of competitive advantage, because most people are trying to get results now, if not yesterday. Let's go look at some of these results that you got from.
Well, I think this is the secret to why my book succeeded. I only started to understand in the last year. It's been out for like 16 months. I think it succeeded because I had a very deep relationship with my audience. I had 3,000 newsletter subscribers, but it was worth more than some people with 30,000 newsletter subscribers because I showed up each week, wrote what I cared about, never asked for anything, and built genuine relationships with people. And I knew I wouldn't quit, and I'd just keep going. And people were like, what is this guy doing? And then when I bought my book, people were like flocking to help me and support me and all this. So, yeah.
Well, let's take a look at these results here. Joshua, here's what Paul posted. Let's see, this was pretty recently. This was May 30th. Okay, so
yeah,
a whole few days ago. What do you see when you see these numbers, Joshua?
Oh, this is great. I mean, this is what I love to see with self-published authors, independently published authors, is the hardcover is not showing up as number one, but I love to see all of the audiobook sales, like almost as many audio combined as print. And what I'm hearing more and more from my independent authors is what their readers are saying. Oh yeah, I already bought a couple of copies, but I had to get the audiobook. And it's the way that it is, and it's just as you said, the way that we consume information has changed. And scrolling on Twitter or scrolling anything on your phone, like consuming the digital device, that's really what books are in competition with now. And so what we as authors, as independent publishers, for ourselves and others must understand is our competition is not just other books, it's the other media that are click away. It's the little dopamine hits along the way. And so having something that's more than reading, but it's audio, you can't necessarily scroll Twitter while you're lifting weights, for example, or while you are doing housework, while you're doing this, that, and the other. And yeah, there's podcasts, but the audiobook is kind of like a long form, really a super long form, a podcast. So I, of course, am putting an audiobook out myself as well for my book. And I'll probably see something similar. Also with the ebook, it's the speed of access. With print, you have to wait, and the wait times change depending on the country. So like this morning, people are telling me, Joshua, Amazon says your book is going to arrive in August. This industry is behind the times. It's 2 months behind the times. Well, more than 2 months, but with the SEO and the other things we talked about, yes, instant access to the information, it's the way to go. It's like buying an online course. You don't buy it and then, okay, I'll wait for a few days for it to arrive. That's not how it works anymore. So that doesn't surprise me. Plus, the ebooks are available in many geographies where the print is necessarily not, or there's like a long wait time for it to arrive.
When you see these numbers, if Paul wanted to optimize sales, would you have any advice, Joshua?
There's more in the next tweet too, if you zoom in on the chart.
Yeah, I remember seeing this one here. Yeah, I like you got here on Gumroad as well. That's smart.
Yeah, so I have it on all channels. I think one thing I just haven't, like, I am not the most optimizer personality. I need to be having fun. The one thing I've done is basically just gift my book to tons of people. I'm probably a little shy of like asking people for help or asking people to do things for me. I sort of have this story I tell myself that's in line with the spirit of the book. But I think sometimes I've realized like even my audience will be like, go bolder, go bigger, try to share these ideas. We want them out there because other people will be more expansive in their thinking. But yeah, it's a process.
Yeah. Usually the two ROI level, well, not just return on investment. I guess return on investment of money, but also return on investment of time. I see with authors is twofold. It's doing as many podcast interviews as they can on an ongoing basis, and then converting readers into clients as often as possible and as much as possible to really build a business around it. And that is, I enjoy doing that for my clients, helping them build businesses around their books, and the book is the foundation. And it's like the book is the first thing that people read before they work with the author in any respect. And it's also required reading for working with them because it's their worldview. And if you understand the worldview, then all of the objections are pre-handled. You also know what to expect, you know why it's valuable, et cetera, et cetera. What have you done in the way of podcast interviews?
Yeah,
Or
I've
any
done
sort
a
of
lot of
interviews?
I've done a lot of podcast interviews. I think one thing that's great about self-publishing is I don't have launch energy. I
Yeah.
don't have like the prep and like go hard for 3 months and release a bunch of podcasts, but I do have long game energy. And I think when people are deciding between the two modes, like traditional publishing will nudge you into a launch type. So I think continuing to talk about these ideas, and given I still like writing about them, it's very natural for me to continue going on podcasts. So that's been huge. Um, Ali Abdal, a big YouTuber, likes my writing and promoted it in a video, and that drove a massive spike in book sales.
Gotcha. Yeah, sustained launches I found work really better. So this is, you may have seen this as one of my clients, a mutual client of Brian's as well, Dr. Philip Avadia, the cardiologist. This has sold about 20,000 copies since November 2021.
Nice.
And his has had a sustained launch. At launch, woo, and then like okay, and then just consistent going along.
Well, it's his life's work, right? It's what he loves doing. And
yes.
Yeah, I don't know
The
what
book
you
is
would
not
call
the
that.
point.
It's not really an authority book. It's like life's work book or something.
Well, in his case, what he does is we have mention of his telehealth practice. He has a community. He has master classes. It's a gateway to all of the other products and services. And we'll casually mention. And I was working with one of my clients the other day, and he talks about like what he does is to give a little bit of future pacing of what it's like to work with him one-on-one and what the value of that is. But it doesn't necessarily look like, oh wow, this is an advertorial, because those are no fun for anybody to read. But a true authority book is, wow, I haven't seen this before. This is new. I have to have more of this. And then by the time you're done reading it, you want more, and that's the intention. And then there's other products and services available. Yeah, but I bring him up because he was not a flash in the pan, kind of like in cryptocurrency, they call it like a pump and dump of a coin or a token, and everybody gets rugged, so to speak. That sort of energy where, okay, we're going to pre-order promotion for a year before the book comes out to rack up all these pre-orders, and then they post on the first day of sales. And then after that, okay, you got your New York Times bestseller status. Okay, and then it's like it just dies off and no one ever talks about it again. We see that a lot, right?
Yeah, I think books are much more like YouTube, and that good stuff will win over time.
Yeah.
Compared to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, there's a much more like randomness and ephemeral nature to it.
We had a comment a bit ago, and I don't know which of your books this was in relation to, whether it was Paul's book or Joshua's book, but Right Awareness is looking forward to checking out your book.
Nice.
Before we hop off today, for folks who are not familiar yet, can you give us the quick rundown, Paul, on who your book is for?
My book is for people that don't quite fit into the default path of what you should do in life and want to dream a little bigger for the possibilities of their life.
What is a pathless path? I like the negation of the thing that you're proposing. Pathless path. What is the pathless path?
Yeah, so I sort of argue everyone grows up with a default path in their head, the story of what you should be doing as an adult to be seen as a successful person. And a pathless path is sort of just permission to embrace a little more uncertainty, discomfort, and also adventure and creativity in your life. It's very poetic, and it's not meant to come with a how-to plan. It's more of like, hey, let's become aware that many of us are stuck on default paths that don't work for us.
I would phrase it as your book is you standing alongside of a road, waving at people as they go by, welcoming them to come on over and have a picnic by the river and get off the road for a second. Just sit down and just like look at the river for a bit, eat a sandwich and just sort of chill out for a little bit before they get back on the road.
I need to talk to you more, Brian, because you are always so good at like translating my stuff to the broader world.
Thank you. Oversimplifying is what I do. We also had an answer back from Right Awareness here. He wants to read both of your books. So good news, you'll very shortly be able to. And on that note, Joshua, who is your new book for?
It's not for beginners. So I did an interview with Andy at Twitter Space, and I was just thinking, one of the best ways to compare fiction books. You probably haven't seen this, Paul. When people are talking about a book, like a fiction book, they'll say it's kind of like this and this. So if you like those two books that everybody knows, then you'll like mine. I want to do that with my nonfiction book. So it's for people who liked Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson and $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. Like the ideas, but are now wondering, okay, well, how? And they're left with the how. That's who's so good they'll call you a fake is for. But the real promise of this is, you've made it when you find yourself collecting organic haters online. Naysayers, negative comments, critics, people calling you every ad hominem label insult in the book, seemingly for no reason whatsoever. And it's sort of a cartoonish negativity around you, and that's what draws attention. People say, "Oh, there's no way that's legit," and look closer and go, "Oh my gosh, this is the real deal." And that's what
hitting this point.
That's the metaphor of the Groucho Marx glasses, disguised glasses on the Mona Lisa. That's what that visual metaphor is for. But it's for people who have in their careers optimized for results over revenue, working with their clients, sometimes even for free, to make sure they get the results. Meanwhile, the people who are richest in their niche have optimized for revenue over results. So they're excellent. They're dialed in marketers. They're the ones who are brilliant at launching products and hype and funnels and retargeting and segmenting your list. Those experts in those domains. But what they lack are consistently producing results for their people. So my book is for people who their results are so good they look fake, but they're just not talking about it. They're not well known. They're the best kept secret. They're not beginners. They're excellent, but they haven't documented what they do. So they've not been able to productize it well, and they've thus not been able to monetize it to the max. And so that's what the book is about, and how to do that step by step with no step skipped.
I think I need your book, because I've been attracting some haters recently, and
good for you.
Brian thinks I should monetize a little better.
We should have a
one of the most important things
that.
you can do for your one of the most important things you can do for your brand is to cultivate organic haters.
So real quick, there's 10 days left in the bonus period. If you buy the book before it comes out, can you mention what those are, Joshua?
Oh, yes. People who buy 10 copies, all of my courses, like over a dozen courses that are priced like together, it's like $2,800, something like that. People can order 10 copies, get all of that stuff for free. I've seen a couple of people test this offer before with various levels of success. And so I'm using my own launch as a guinea pig, testing different things to see what will work, and then we can pull it out for other offers of mine.
Cool.
Wonderful. And then for folks who want Paul's book, it's called The Pathless Path, and you can get it everywhere, as we saw before. And then also there is the URL to get that.
My standing offer too is that I will gift it to anyone who asks. So reach out.
Love it. Thanks everybody for joining us on this conversation about self-publishing. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.